Welcome to the Canadian Homeschooler Podcast, where we have real conversations about all things homeschooling from a Canadian perspective. I'm your host, Lisa Marie, and today I'm joined with a special guest, Courtney Riddell from Little Monkey Entertainment, and we're going to have a conversation about adding drama and theater to your homeschool day. So grab your favorite drink and come join us on the couch. Well, I really want to thank you for joining me here. I'm excited to have a conversation about theater because I secretly wished I could have done it when I was in school and never did. So there you go.
I love that.
So just want to take a few minutes and tell us a little bit who you are and what you do and just introduce yourself.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Courtney Riddell, and I own a company called Little Monkey Entertainment or Center Stage Kids. I use both names just to confuse people. And I've been teaching theater and musical theater for almost 20 years. I don't know how that math adds up. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. I must have started when I was very, very small. But I just love it. I love theater. I love musical theater. I love seeing how kids can grow and develop and learn skills that they don't even know they're learning. And yeah, it's just a passion of mine, and it's been something that comes to me organically, but I know it's not for everybody. I always have to kind of remind myself that. But yeah, it's something I love to do, and it's what I love to share, and it's what I do.
Fantastic. So what got you started in theater and teaching kids in theater?
My mom was actually a drama teacher as well. So from a very young age, I was introduced to the church shows and her programs. And I just remember kind of tagging along when I was quite little, and I always wanted to perform. And then of course I actually went to a theater arts school, a high school that I loved. So I knew how important it was, especially kind of those teen years, to find something that I really took me out of my shell, but also let me find emotions and a way to express myself. And then I went on to a musical theater sort of triple arts school. It's kind of like Fame. It's actually hilarious. And at, the age of 20, I was back in ballet tights with my bun in my hair and kind of relearning things that I used to do when I was 4 or 5. And I got out of that. And the first thing, you start auditioning, and I was getting no work. And someone's like, well, why don't you just start teaching? And I'm like, I don't know. That doesn't seem like what I could do. But at the same time, I was actually doing kids' birthday parties. So it was actually a perfect fit. I was a princess for kids' birthday parties for many, many years. So I was like, you know what? Teaching theater could be really great. And what I always wanted to bring to it is I wanted to bring this fun. I knew when I was 4, I was not I tried ballet when I was 4. I was terrible. I got kicked out of class. I didn't pay attention. I didn't enjoy it. So when I had to relearn it when I was 20, I was like, oh my God, why didn't I stick with this? But it's because there's sometimes this rigidness in teaching theater and musical theater. And I was like, I don't want any of that. I want it to be fun and expressive and really kind of meet kids where they're at, and then get it comfortable. So yeah, since then I've just been teaching it and enjoying it. And I actually found that part of my love of theater got even bigger when I realized, oh my gosh, not only, do I get to perform sometimes with the kids, but I get to see them kind of just come out of their shells. And probably my favorite part is actually when they come up with really cool ideas. If I'm directing a show and I'm like, let's try this, let's try that. And then all of a sudden they're like, Miss Courtney, and they do something. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. When they start coming up with some really fun ideas and get into character. Oh, it's so beautiful. Yeah. So it's just something I've continued. And then, since I have kids of my own now, I had to figure out, how do I still get my love of theater. And obviously I can't go out on an audition and do shows and travel and do all those things. So teaching became the next best thing.
What are the benefits of being involved with theater?
Well, Lisa, you don't have all day, but I will I'll share you some of my favorites. I mean, of course, the confidence is probably the biggest thing. The amount of kids I have kind of seen come into theater and, not be super interested, and then sort of by the end like love it so much they're like, okay, what else, what's next, what else can I do, is huge. Like I kind of mentioned before, for myself as a teenager, is finding ways to really express yourself, right? Because we are taught to behave and act a certain way and do this and do that.
Yeah.
And like sometimes emotions are so big, and especially for little bodies and teens and youth, like it's hard to control those emotions. So I always used to joke that I'm like, I never have to pay for therapy because I'm a theater student, and I could one day be like crying and the next day be skipping, and like all the emotions in between you hit all the time, which is quite fun, really. It's obviously great for communication skills. So for both obviously talking, but listening as well is such a huge
Mhm.
part of theater. And then I think really just like that balance of, okay, kids, and this is always sort of the trickiest part. You're like, I'm going to let you be really wild in one moment, but then in the next moment, you really have to focus. So it's that balance of trying to learn, okay, I'm going to be creative. I'm going to explore. I'm going to like do things that might be out of my comfort zone. But then 2 seconds later, I also have to listen and hear what's next, or I'm going to miss a cue, or I'm going to miss something, or, and just kind of that thinking on your feet too. Sorry, that's the last one. Now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, that's always a good one too. And that's
Mhm.
probably was my favorite for the longest time when I performed as well, as I like that, like, I know anything can happen in theater, and I always used to joke like anything can happen in kids theater. I actually, while I was teaching, actually around the same time, I used to perform in kids theater, and I was playing Goldilocks in the musical Goldilocks, and I got to the part where I sat on Baby Bear's chair and I broke it, and I was in the middle of this big solo, and I'm singing away. And all of a sudden, this sweet little boy comes running up. Before I could even say my next line, I look down and he's trying to fix my chair. And he goes,
Oh,
don't worry, Goldilocks, I'm gonna fix it. I'm like, oh no, no, no. Oh, thank you. And he like went back to his seat, and I'm like, oh, look, oh, sorry. Oh, it's still broken. But like, yeah, just the fact that anything can happen in theater, and you gotta think on your feet, and you gotta figure out what's next. So those are some of the skills, but like I said, there's so many more that you don't even know you're learning, because you're just like, oh, I'm playing games, or I'm just
yeah.
saying these lines, or I'm just doing this scene or this character. But at the end of the day, you've learned so much.
Yeah, it sounds like it's one of those what I call sneak schooling, where we kind of have all these things we've learned and we don't even know we've done it. So that's pretty
Right?
cool. Yeah, very nice. All right, so I'll ask from a mom perspective. My daughter loves music and she loves the idea of being in front of people, but she is terrified beyond utter belief. What do you deal with kids who are so nervous? Like she will not sing, stand, do anything in front of people except her one brother. And that's it. That's the only person. But she, in her heart, one day I'm going to be a singer.
Loves it.
And
Yeah, yeah.
I was that mom. I was that kid too, right? I couldn't even do the stand in front of people for a speech day because I would literally have a panic attack. So, I mean, it wasn't until I discovered music when I was in about grade 7 or 8, and the music teacher saw the potential in me and made me sing a solo in front of a very large audience. I discovered I could do this. It's not so bad. But as a mom, how can I encourage a child to get over that like really nervous, can't handle people thing?
It's a big one. It's definitely a big one. I think one of the biggest things I do in any of my programs is I really trying to kind of meet the kids where they're at. And one of the first things we do in sort of our in-person theater or musical theater classes is when we're looking into, okay, we're going to do this show. I asked them, I said, okay, what kind of role are you kind of looking for? Do you want one that you're going to sing by yourself and maybe dance by yourself and say lines by yourself? Do you want one that maybe you're going to sing with a group of people and have a line here or there? Or do you want one where you're kind of with the group all the time and you're supporting each other and really going from there? And it's funny because I will say 95% of the time, kids will start at one level. And then as you continue and they see other kids doing it and they see, oh, it's not so bad. And they see, like, okay, it's actually, I know this really well, that by the time it comes to showtime, they are asking for more. They're like, oh, Miss
Mm.
Courtney, can I have another line? Can I do this? I also think it's really important to like let them have those feelings, know they're going to happen. I tell my performers, okay, we're getting ready for showtime, and we have kind of a group huddle. I'm like, all right, guys, you know this, you know it in your body, you know it everywhere. I go, but beware, your stomach might start feel some butterflies. Like it's going to happen, and this is what we're going to do together. And we kind of go through exercises together where we take these big breaths. A lot of things that we do in our theater classes are very repetitive. So, like every class starts the same, every class finishes the same. And it's those big breaths that we do, and we let it out in a certain way. And then we end class every day with these like shakedowns that brings rhythm, that brings movement, that brings this like tradition and routine that it's like I've given them the tools all the way and they didn't realize they were getting them. But we talk about it. We say, okay, you might be a little bit nervous. This might happen. What we're going to do is we're going to do your big breaths. And they're like, okay, okay. So we do it and we all do it together. But yeah, I think just starting slow, like if you're at home and exactly what you had said before, like, okay, if she's willing to do it to one brother, awesome. Like start right there. And maybe it's a way, can you show me just like 5 seconds of that song? Or is there a way you can show me, oh, a little bit more? I kind of heard you doing that. Can you teach me? Right. So trying to bring it, but not in a way that it's performance yet. Right. So it's still rehearsal, it's still play. I really emphasize a lot when I'm teaching theater that there's no right or wrong. One of the first games I play, because it's one where I'm like, I don't want them to use words. I just want them to use sound and a movement. And part of it is just like that learning in your gut, like whatever you're feeling at that moment, right? But it's funny because so many kids go, oh, what sound do I do? Oh my gosh, what movement do I do? They get in their heads, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Oh, you're thinking too much, thinking too much, thinking too much. So really, once again, just like letting that big breath and like going with the first whatever sound it is, whatever movement it is. But yeah, a lot of kids get in their heads. So just like meeting them where they're at, giving them little bits here and there. And then you'd be surprised once they get that comfort level and they kind of like start enjoying it, she'll probably be, Mom, I got a concert for you. Sit down, sit down.
I believe that she's got the stage and the costumes and the songs and she's ready to go. And then she
Right?
panics at the last minute. So I know when she gets over that, we're going to be all
Oh my
concerts all
gosh.
the time.
And you can do it in different ways. Like maybe for the first bit, you turn around and you're not looking at her.
I've done the sit on the couch with my head backwards and my phone recording so I can watch from my phone. That she didn't know the phone was on because I don't want her to get scared, right? So but I wanted to be able to see it. So there you go.
Or
How do you think that the average homeschool family can kind of incorporate theater into their day? Like I know there's programs that you can take, and that's amazing. I know you run one, but is there ways that just as a mom, I can start helping integrate theater into our day?
For sure. So once again, like I said, meeting kids where they're at and what they're interested in right now. One of the kind of most simple things that you could probably do is take a book that they're already reading or a character that they already like and like kind of work with them and be like, all right, let's break down this character. And there's definitely something with that too, like especially kids who might feel a little bit nervous. If you're like, you're no longer you're
Mm,
playing this character, right? So finding a character they already like, they already know about. I love, like, even in script work, is being like a bit of a detective. So if, like I said, you have a book, you have a character, we can be like, all right, what do we know? What has this book already told us about this character? Okay, they're this age. They like these things. Do we know how big they are? Do they know anything special about them? And relationships, like who's their best friend? Do they have siblings? Start learning about those characters. And then what else I also really love to do, and in script work, or like I said, if they're playing with characters, if the answers aren't there, your kid gets to decide. So create
mm,
that backstory, right? But I find, especially if you start with something that they are familiar with, something that they already really like, it's you're mimicking, right? You're taking pieces of like, oh, I know, the kids love Disney movies. Oh, I love this. Well, what does this princess do? And you start from that one level of what they've seen and then what they create together. But then you can get really fun and be like, all right, well, what do you think? What do you think Cinderella looks like when she's really, really tired and she's been cleaning the whole house, right? And it's showing that and it's taking different characters, or like, what would, Cinderella look like at our homeschool? What would, right? So taking the character
mm.
out of, now we know they're normal. we've kind of built up the backstory. We know what's happening, but like adding different elements to it and just trying to play around with different characters. I also love, if they, like you said before, loving music. I'm a huge fan, obviously, of music and dance parties, but doing it in a way that doesn't mean you have to do things right or wrong. So once again, one of my favorite games is Dance Like, and I can do it with any age, young, old, whoever. And you can start, and if you notice they're like not really, oh, I'm not sure, I'm not sure. Then you start dancing like things that are ridiculous. Like, how does a balloon dance? How does a butterfly dance? How does right? And you're still getting the value of like, oh, there's different, weights, and there's different speeds, and there's different feelings of music, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't seem serious and it doesn't seem like you're being judged. And then I will also say one of the biggest things, especially for families doing theater at home, and I find a lot of parents get stuck in their heads of this right or wrong as well. It's the buy-in. It's you've got it from, okay, now that we're doing theater, it's not like when we sit down and do math. It's not like when we do this. It's not like that. It is different. So it's almost like the parent has to be a little bit different too. You have to be willing to get a little silly, get in there, do things that they don't expect you to do, and get the buy-in. And then you'll see your kiddos will get really excited. And the things you guys can play together is so much fun. Like, I love going into a classroom or a co-op or anything like that, and I start playing an improv game, and I give myself a character, and I just do something very silly that they wouldn't expect. I remember one time I was at a high school, and it was a very like ghetto high school. And I went in to like help out and teach, and they weren't expecting, and I was like, I forget, they were some other like Valley Girl character, but I went overboard, and they could not believe that this woman came in to, like, they were dying. They were laughing so hard, but that was the buy-in. They were like, oh gosh, if she can do that, then we can, pretend we're a robot, or we can do this. Like, it's that back and forth. But yeah, meeting them where they're at, kind of starting simple, and then playing from there and seeing what they want to do. And then, like I said before, when kids start really enjoying themselves, they'll come up with fun games. They'll come up with something and just like, oh yeah, you want to try that? Let's try it. Let's do it. And just kind of go from there.
As you're saying that about parents being involved in the buy-in and stuff, I was thinking, so many of us, maybe this is just me projecting, but so many of us don't have that like theater background, or even other than the forced drama stuff we had in school, right? Which never really felt authentic, but you know what I mean? Like, we don't have that background. So how do we get comfortable or understand what we should be doing, or like, are there steps that we should take as parents who don't have a background in theater to be able to bring that passion to our kids?
I think it goes back to, like I said, with the kids, finding their interests, maybe finding your interest. Like, what is your favorite show, or your favorite production, or your favorite play, or your favorite musical, and getting inspiration from there as well. But also, just so important, like going back, there's no, like, that's what's so fun about theater, really no right or wrong, really just getting creative and trying new things. And that's where I like love in theater. Sometimes people, you're like, oh, it's stereotypical, like I said, being a robot or a cowboy or whatever. But those stereotypes kind of make it even playing ground for everybody, right? Like, it's just like, it's not really, you're not poking fun. You're just playing this like stereotype, like it's a character, it's something unique, it's something different. But once again, I just think parents having fun with your kids and like really exploring with them, and knowing like no one's videotaping you, no one's watching, don't judge yourself, and know, like I said, your kid's going to read that off of you as well, right? If you're reading the instructions and you're reading it like this, your kid is listening to it like that. Where if you're trying to, okay, and that's what I said, when you start that first, like, okay, this is theater class, not math, it's here's a few theater guidelines. And some for my class in particular are always, okay, you got to try it. Even if you don't love it, we've got to try it. And if later on you want to come up to me and like, you know what, I really didn't like, this game, or I really didn't like this character, or I didn't really like this line, cool, but we're going to try it. And I think as a parent as well, that shows them like, as a parent, I'm trying it with you. Like, we're trying this together. Let's do this together. It's going to be different. It's going to be a little silly. I always tell them that too. Like, you know what? You're going to do silly things that you probably aren't going to do in every other class that we're doing. But we also have to listen, because if we don't listen, we miss the next thing. And the next thing is going to be just as good. And then the next thing is going to be just as good. And then, yeah, once things start rolling, but I just say, don't take yourself too seriously in theater, right? Don't, even like the most serious speech, I think, can be broken down in ways that like is not so serious anymore.
So how important do you think it is to watch or observe actual theater for kids?
Yeah, no, it is a great resource. And it's funny, I the other day was in a conversation with someone who was talking about nutrition. And she was funny because she was like, just trying to share it in different ways. We always think when we're talking kids with nutrition, they've got to cook with us. Like that's how we're introducing it. And she was like, no, sometimes even just like looking at it on somebody else's plate, or watching it being cooked, or, seeing that these ingredients make this. I feel kind of theater and musical theater is that same thing, like introducing it in different ways. Like live theater is incredible to watch. I think it's really important for kids sometimes to watch kids do live theater. So many times when we do our full productions, we have schools come, we have a lot of homeschoolers come, and it's right off the bat, they're like, they love it. They're so into it because they don't, when you're on TV, sometimes you don't always see someone like you. And when kids see themselves on stage, or kids their age, or, doing things that they potentially could do, I find that always gets them really excited. And then, yeah, finding those interests that they already have. So if there's a show in Toronto right now, because I think you're in Ontario as well, right? Dogman, the musical, is out.
Oh.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant though, right? Like, why? Of
Yep.
course, inviting kids to enjoy theater. It doesn't have to be super serious. It doesn't have to be, we're all going to watch Shakespeare together, but it's ways to get them out there and learning, and different levels of theater too, I think is really fun. I know as a kid, I saw like professional shows, I saw community theater shows, I saw school shows, like just getting out there and seeing what's available. And then sometimes going back and like, okay, well, why don't we read that script that we just saw that show? Or why don't we, write what could happen next in that play at the very end, what's gonna right? So adding it all back and getting them excited about it. But yeah, introducing it in different ways, I think, is very key. And it's a great way to kind of slowly introduce kids who might not be super eager about it yet.
I remember going to see Phantom of the Opera when I was about 12. And I remember being completely overwhelmed in amazement. But it's so different than seeing it on TV, because you get to see all the like pieces and all the parts that come together. Whereas television episodes and shows are so well polished and the audio is perfect and all those things. Whereas in person, it's such a different experience. And I think the idea that you mentioned about different versions of it, so the professional version, but also a kid version, and your next door neighbor doing their play in their backyard or whatever needs to happen, I think that's good for kids. I absolutely agree, because they need to see the different levels and how it doesn't have to be the perfect polished television edition. There's so many other versions of theater out there, right? So even those guys that are on the street buskering and doing the things,
right?
that's theater as well, right?
So. Totally. Yeah. Different versions, different things. My favorite thing actually is when kids start doing we do a musical and they're like, oh, I've done that one before. I've seen it before. And I'm like, well, my friends, our version is going to be different. And they're like, what do you mean? And then when we finally get to the end product, they're like, oh, I see. And I'm like, no, that's what's cool about it. That one show can be done so many different ways, just depending on that person's version or that person's vision. Or sometimes, I mean, even in theater, and that's, like I said, what I love about it is that one night could be very different from the next night, depending on the audience, depending how people are feeling, depending if, oh my goodness, and something happened or someone missed a line or this happened, right? There's so many things that can be different that, yeah, seeing as many different versions of things, I think, is really, really cool for kids.
Cool. So I have a question for you. I honestly, as I said, I'm not in the theater world, so I'm not as familiar. But if you have children who are interested in doing it more than just in your living room playing with mom and dad, how do you get involved in a theater program?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely doing some research is super important to see what is available, what is there for your kiddo. And then I would go and check it out, maybe chat and see some of the reviews. Just because, like I said, within our community alone, like there have been many people that come to my show or come to like sort of what we do. And they are so grateful because we really sort of believe in this opportunity for everybody. We don't audition our kids. We are definitely more about of development rather than perfection. And I firmly believe, like, I've always loved theater, but I might not have been the kid who got the lead role every single time. And I was always told, like, there's no small parts, there's no small parts. But you know what? There are small parts to be in a show. And if you love it so much and you're not getting the opportunity, it could take away kids' ambition. So one of the things we really do is I try and make an opportunity for every single kid that's in my program. And whether they like, if they want it, like I said, our first conversation is, what are you looking for? And if they don't want it, I'm not forcing it. That's not going to help anybody. But if they are interested in it, I will make sure there is an opportunity for them to shine and shine in multiple ways. So really looking at the different places that are out there, because some are the opposite. Some are very much about the product, right? And some are like, they don't care that your kid's going to be there 4 nights a week rehearsing till 10 p.m. at night, which I think is insane. So really kind of finding what you're looking for, what your kids were looking for. I would say just be careful. Potentially do the research first, you as mom, as dad, as an adult, because I know kids get very, very excited. And sometimes when you add on that like audition element and the fact that there's an opportunity, but you actually might not have this opportunity, is hard for kids to understand as well. So I would definitely kind of check around, see what is out there. I am a big fan of Facebook groups and in my community, and asking for honest opinions from families of like, hey, who has done this program before? Who's done this program before? And see, because like, once again, similar, like I said, all the different levels of theater are out there. All the different levels of theater classes are out there as well, right? You could start with ones that are just, there's a lot of just improv classes. There's a lot of ones that are just kind of like a small group community-based thing. There's so many different opportunities. And then you get, okay, now this one's a little bit more professional. It's going to be a big show at the end. This one's going to be this one's going to be that. So really kind of checking and see. And then once you kind of figure out options, then I would definitely sit down and chat with your kiddo. What do they really want to do? Like, do they want to do some singing? Do they want to do dancing with it? I know there's a lot now out there kind of for like acting for film. I would say it's not as fun. Pre-warning. Acting for film is not as fun because you're just like stuck to the small little box. It's very different kind of acting, to be completely honest. So that is something that they need to understand as well. I think if you're taking them out to all these other shows and you can see, you'll start knowing what your kid is interested in, and then just do a little bit of research first.
Yeah. So if you end up in a program where they have auditions and stuff, do you have any tips for just kind of preparing the kids for that? I know it's not like, all right, we need to practice 14 days a week. I don't mean that, but I just mean like just general tips, and maybe even just mental health tips to be able to prevent them from having a massive collapse if they don't make what they hoped for.
Yes. Yeah. So my biggest one would be finding like a song or like whatever they're asking for that your kid really likes. When you're a professional theater artist, you're supposed to be matching the audition to the show. When you're a kid, I just want something that you love, because that's when you show me, oh gosh, this kid really likes this. They've got a spark for it. It also makes them so much more comfortable. I remember years ago, I did a last minute audition for, I think it was YTV, which was very popular at the time. And I learned this monologue the night before because I didn't like the one I had chosen. So I borrowed one of my mom's, which clearly I hadn't, it didn't make any sense to me. I kind of just memorized it. Well, I went up to do it and I flubbed that audition so bad. I forgot it. I got all flustered. I got right. So it's really, like I said, finding something that they like, that they enjoy when they're practicing at home. I think the biggest thing with auditions and with kids in particular, making fun, big choices, right? So if you're sitting there and you're auditioning and you've seen, I don't know, 50 kids, and a lot of them probably have done similar things, right? Because everyone goes in, says their lines or does their part, does whatever. Where if they go in and they do something that they've made this choice that might be a little bit different, might be a little bit unique, the director is going to remember that kid, right? Because they're going to know, okay, they made that they made that choice. That's cool. Whether they, as a director, think it was the right one or not, it's going to be memorable. It's going to be fun. It's going to be, something unique. And then coming to the mental health line, like I think it goes back to similar what I said is meeting them where they're at. And like, when you talk about before, like if you might feel this and you might feel nervous. So talk about, okay, this is how this process is going to work. It's not always fair, right? You're going to have to do this. You're going to say your name. You're going to do your part and you just have fun. I want you to have the greatest time. Show them what you can do. Show them how you love it. Show them how you practice at home. But there's a chance, at the end, you might not get it and maybe talk through what that looks like. And then I think it's just all about those conversations. I know my three boys, we just went through hockey tryouts and it was hard and we've done it multiple years in a row. And my one didn't get on the team. Well, it was funny. I don't know. He was happy. He's happy near the end, but yeah, it's just it is life lessons and they are hard. But I think, having those important conversations with your kid, letting them know, of course, you are so proud of them. And there could be a billion reasons why they chose someone else and not you. Like I will share, there's many times I've gone to an audition. I just shared one that I flubbed. There's ones that I have kicked butt. And I was like, I am for sure getting a call. No call. And then there's been ones where I was so terrible and I cried and I slapped someone. I was out of my mind and I got the call back and I got the job. So there's really no rhyme to reason, which I know is super hard as anybody to understand, especially if it's something you've worked on. But I think as long as they're doing something they love, they've practiced it, they feel good in it, they're excited about it, make those big choices. And then know at the end of the day, as mom or dad, you might have to have a hard conversation, but know that there's another opportunity coming up. I recently had a student who I was working with for a little while, and she had a big audition for a kind of a local group, but it's like a little bit professional, and she didn't get it, and she was very disappointed. And then they had another audition, and she went back, and she didn't think she got it, so she actually went somewhere else. Well, in the meantime, she got that other role. So then she was terrified because she's like, well, what do I do? And I was like, if you want that next level and that kind of professionalism one, you're going to have to go with that one. And then since then, they love her, right? So they keep hiring her again. They keep getting her in these shows. So it's definitely your time. Your time will come. Have fun with it. But unfortunately, it is part of the process.
Yeah, I know when I was a teen, when I got into music, I remember auditioning for one of the choirs that was audition only. Like it was more of a professional based choir and I didn't get in. And I remember being upset at the time. But looking back now, it's like completely not. Like it doesn't matter in the long scheme of things, but it's hard when you're in the moment because it feels so big and emotions and you invested so much of your energy. But I think it's important for us as parents, as I think about how I felt then, just to be willing to accept the feelings that come with that, right? To validate that you're grieving the thing that you've been looking for, and that's okay. And I like your idea about there's more opportunities out there. This isn't the only door. And maybe, as you said, you can find an option that isn't audition based, or that there's other things that you can use your talents towards than specifically that one experience. So but it's so hard. I know feelings are hard when they're big and you've emotionally invested yourself into something. So I had another thought. So I have kids that there's no way ever in a bazillion, trillion, quadrillion years would stand on a stage. But is there other ways to be involved in theater that don't involve being on the front?
Of course. Yes. A lot of theater groups will let you come and help with tech. A lot of theaters will help you behind the scenes. A lot of our programs, we have youth that come in and help us out with like backstage and creating props and costumes and kind of going from there. But once again, it's funny because even those kids, they start there and then they're like, oh, there's a one line available. Well, I can do one line. Well, that's a group number. Like I'm not just by myself. Well, maybe like once they start really being, seeing what else is there, it might be interesting. But yes, there are lots of different ways you can get in the theater. And then, like I said, even before, like going back to that, like, okay, well, what character do you really like? Like before you even get to act it out, why don't we just write a script together? What would they talk like? How would they, right? Like, so starting from what they're comfortable with and then kind of slowly sneaking. I mean, I don't know. My kids like to make TikToks of themselves. So I'm sure if they wanted to make a TikTok for someone, all of a sudden there's no fear. They can.
Yeah, that's true. That's my daughter keeps saying, watch this video. She's not really,
Right?
but she just pretends she's on a video all the time. I'm
Yes.
like, come on, man. Can we just pretend we're looking with our eyeballs instead of at a
Right.
video? But that's
Yeah.
okay. All right. So a couple last questions here. Like, what's the main advice that you would offer somebody who's thinking about adding and they're just starting theater in their homeschool?
Oh, good one. I think it's finding what your kid's interested in. It's finding what you're comfortable with as well, right? Like I said, I don't want anyone to like run out there and buy all the books if they're not interested in it too. But just going back to that thought of like, it can be just fun. It can be just exploring. It can be like just fun games. And there's ways to adapt them if there's only, you and your kid or you and like another few kids. They don't have to be these big groups. And that's what I've been actually helping a lot with different families of just like, how do you adapt this? How do you adapt this for different ages? How do you adapt this for, kiddos of different abilities? Like, how do you introduce it in ways that isn't so scary? But I would think, yeah, as someone who wants to introduce your family, I would just start slow, have fun, let them know we're going to try it. We're going to try it together. There's no right or wrong. We're just going to play and play together.
What do you wish that parents and kids could take away, like the key takeaway from incorporating their theater into their lives?
It's just some of those skills that we mentioned from the beginning and the fact that you're doing it without them even knowing it. Like I know for myself, theater has made me the person I am. I have no problem having conversations with anybody. I have no problem hopping into a room of, anybody networking. I run my own business. I chat with people. Even when I was younger, though, like job interviews weren't so scary because it's like a script. I'm chatting back and forth. We're talking, right? So little skills that I've been comfortable with for years. We mentioned talking about in presentations, right? Like I could ace any course that gave me a presentation in it because I was like, oh, let me do this, please. Like I was so pumped when that would happen. And then it just continued, right? I served for a while. I did different things. These are skills that, it's funny because a lot of parents are like, oh, I don't want my kids studying theater or musical theater. That's not going to pay the bills. But there's skills that like will take you so far in life and just little things, right? Like a lot of the games I play talk about eye contact, right? That is a huge thing in our society right now because like you said before, everyone's got a phone in their face. So this games, so many of them are about, oh, you've got to grab eye contact with someone. How are you reading what they're saying, even though they might not be saying that, right? So all these games are giving you skills that you don't even know your kids need, right? So I think it is very valuable, but don't take yourself too seriously.
Perfect. I can definitely feel your passion and love for theater today. So that's fantastic. So where can our listeners find you and how can they get involved more in theater with you?
Awesome. Yes. So my website is littlemonkeyentertainment.com. I've actually just started sharing some really great free resources. I have a free Friday drama club for homeschoolers, and it's all different ages. It actually got so popular so quick. I had to break it into different age groups. I'm actually looking at adding some more meetings because I have people now from all over the world. So the first timing no longer works. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But it's wonderful because it just reaffirms that what I know, that people love this, people know this, kids can do so much with this. So you can find my free Friday drama club. And then I do have a new program coming out very soon for teens and tweens in particular, because like I said, all my kids are right at that age right now, and I know how hard it is. So to kind of help them and give them some of these skills right in that most difficult age is going to be wonderful. And then from there, I have so many ideas. I cannot wait. But yeah, check me out, littlemonkeyentertainment.com, or on Instagram, it's at Center Stage Kids.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. I have my brain going, how can I add more theater to our lives?
Oh my gosh.
So that's good.
With me, I can't wait. I honestly, I get so excited doing this stuff. And now really kind of adapting it for my homeschoolers has been so much fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me. I've had a great conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Canadian Homeschooler Podcast. We hope that you've been inspired to add some drama and theater to your homeschool days. In the next episode, I'll be chatting with Elena about how to handle homeschool opposition. If you have any feedback, ideas for topics, or people that we should connect with for interviews, please let us know. And don't forget to share with your homeschooling friends. Thanks so much for joining in. Until next time, happy learning.